This past week, I had the opportunity to talk, a wonderful opportunity to talk with a pastor who is overseas. And I got to hear a little bit about how this crisis was impacting them. Their country had only went on lockdown a few days ago, and, uh, and their response has been so different from what it has been here. It has been swift, it has been unified. You can't leave the city you're in, and you will be arrested if they find you on the street. It's very intense. Several times, the pastor I was talking to spoke about how basically everyone in that country was okay with it. They had heard what the experts were suggesting, and they were suggesting that intense response. And they understood that it made sense and was in the best interest of everyone. Hearing this week from her made me realize what a stark contrast that is to here in the United States. It has been amazing and somewhat disturbing for me to see how much debate there has been this week about what we should be doing as a country. Debate about the real danger of the virus, debate about the economic risk of a shutdown, about the media overhyping things, about why this virus is different than the flu or H1N1. You hear this from Fox News and its ilk and all the representatives of government that buy into that. And the argument that seems to divide our country right now boils down to this. The virus is overhyped, and the economic devastation of shutting things down will be much worse than the virus itself. Hence, the desire to open churches by Easter, which we will not be doing. Hence the suggestion from folks like Glenn Beck that older Americans should be willing to sacrifice their lives for the economy, saying he'd rather die than kill his country. Now that is some high-minded, intense language. In other circumstances, it could be inspiring. Sacrifice, selflessness, looking out for future generations. But the choice between destroying the economy and saving lives is a false one, and a deeply immoral one. Look, I get that the economy is in trouble. I get that retirement plans have cratered and people are relying on that money. I get that joblessness claims rose astronomically this week, and many of us are deeply worried about rent and mortgage payments and just surviving and feeding our families. I get that that is scary and that is real. But the false choice between the economy and safety is a false one, and it is based on false assumptions. It's the assumption that our country is too poor that we can't do both. It suggests that somehow the richest country in the world doesn't have the money to keep its people safe and well. Here are some things that we know to be true. We have enough to make sure everyone gets treated and survives. We have enough to make sure everyone has enough to pay rent and food and medical bills. We have enough to make sure that small businesses survive. The real question is not between choosing the economy over our safety, but whether we will use the money we actually have to protect people, both physically and economically, or will we decide that that price tag is too high? Moments of crisis reveal truth. During the Great Depression, our country learned that the elderly needed support, and so Social Security was born. People then said it wasn't possible, that it would bankrupt the country, that it was un-American. During the Great Depression, people needed jobs, and so the government put people back to work on building roads and making art. And just like that, they had jobs to support their families. And others cried socialism. There is a truth being revealed right now, too. It's that this moment is a real crisis. But for millions of Americans, their life is always a crisis. It's not like during normal times our healthcare system works well. It's not like there aren't people in normal times who can't afford medical care and die because they can't get the care they need. Have you ever tried to get care in New York City with bad health insurance or no health insurance? Let me tell you, it is awful. It is dehumanizing. It is embarrassing. It makes you feel angry, and it is immoral. And then you can imagine how bad it is if you are undocumented or don't speak English or suffer from mental illness or are one of the many groups of people who are statistically less likely to receive quality care. Is the only difference now that even those with health insurance are in trouble? Is it that even those with privilege are afraid and at risk? It's not like during normal times, we don't see people struggling to pay rent or living paycheck to paycheck or wondering where their next meal is. Is it just that there's enough of us now worrying about those things who aren't used to it, that we decide it's worth investing in and spending in? This moment should be a wake-up call for us. Yes, the virus is uniquely scary and dangerous. The impact it can have across American life and health is immense, and we should take it deeply seriously. But what is not unique is that our healthcare system is unable to protect and preserve human life. Our economic system is unable to serve anyone. What is not unique is the lack of solutions and the refusal to spend on what is needed to make sure everyone is okay. We don't think of that as a crisis because it's just the status quo. We live with it all the time, and people die from it. If this is news to you, that's because you have been fortunate to have the power and resources to protect yourself from what the less fortunate people among us already know. Many of us live with it because we don't have the power to change it, or we're used to it, or because we've been convinced that we can't do any better. It's especially galling because we know that the money is there. It's there in so many other countries across the world. It's there with Amazon, who was not taxed last year. It is there with the wealthy whose tax rate has plummeted over the past 50 years and who possess a vast majority of our country's resources. Money always seems to be there when we need it to fight wars or bail out the airlines or the car companies when they are in danger. But rarely is it there for the father on food stamps, or the kid growing up in poverty, or the mother who's been laid off for work trying to get health coverage for her family, even in normal times. Following the last great economic downturn, the author and thinker Naomi Klein wrote what I think is a wonderfully insightful and also disturbing book called The Shock Doctrine. She argues that in moments of crisis throughout history, those crisis moments are pivotal in defining a country's direction. She argues that throughout history, governments have used crises to change things in their country, to use them for their own ends, often nefariously. We saw it in Germany when Hitler used the Reichstag fire to justify solidifying power. We saw it after 9/11 with the Patriot Act, and after the Great Recession, when money was poured into corporations rather than giving it to people who lost thousands in savings and were relying on that money. Klein argues that history is full of examples of people and governments abusing crises. But she also argues that it can be different, that they can be moments of profound social change, just like they were in the Great Depression, of evolutionary shifts of consciousness, a change of expectations and awareness of what we really need and what we deserve. In this moment of crisis that we're in, we need to be clear about its true lessons for us. The lesson is not that we must save the stock market while people die without ventilators. The lesson is not that to make a decision about how many lives saved per dollar spent is reasonable. This is the real lesson, that our system puts a price on human life each and every day during normal times. We just see it more during times of crisis. Our leaders put a price on it when they decide how much to invest every year in the federal budget for affordable health care. They put a price on it when they decide how much money to invest in restorative justice and food stamps and foster care and education. Much of the time, they probably aren't even making a moral calculation at all because they, like so many of us, are just set in our assumption that our current paradigm is the only paradigm. But it's not. Or They do what they do because human greed and selfishness are real. That the decisions our government makes and the people in power make are not based on a hard decision, but on their own need for power and resources in a system that gives those power and resources a means for reinforcing it. If this crisis teaches us anything, it should be that these calculations about preserving human life versus the dollars that we spend should never have to be made. And when they do, that people always come first. There is enough for everyone if we are willing to make it so. This is a radical shift. It's a moral shift. It's a shift in our consciousness to understand that if some of us are not safe and well, none of us are. There is no good reason we shouldn't be able to get this done. There's no good reason why anyone who is working hard should worry about paying rent or their next meal. That's true in this crisis, and it is true all the time. We just have to believe that we can do better and expect that we can do better, and then do better. There is nothing stopping us but ourselves and our own expectations. We have what we need for this crisis, for the next one, and all the normal times in between. We have all the mangoes in this world. May we believe it and make it so now and in all the times to come. May it be so, and amen.